All right. Welcome to a special on the road edition of Orthodoxy Questions Answered. As you can see, we're not in our normal studio tonight. Father Angelo is, well, you guessed it,
On
on the
travel.
road.
On the road, exactly. Right, right.
Where are you at, Father?
Oh, just in Detroit, so not that far away.
Not that far away. We did a few Tartan priests from Detroit. I quite enjoyed those, but this week we're gonna be debuting a new one from Ohio, and then the following month we're gonna be doing one from Rochester and Ohio, a dual location Tartan priest. So look forward to that. Due to, and as many of you may have experienced on the road edition of Orthodoxy Questions Answered, tonight we will be only going for 1 hour, but as the saying goes, the show
The show
must
must
go
go on.
on. So, are you enjoying your trip, Father?
Yes, it's nice to be. I mean, as most of our viewers know, we spent over 25 years here, in the Detroit area, and actually, my first assignment in the military was here in Detroit. So when you tack on that 5 years plus the 24 years that we were here already, so we've got almost 30 years in Detroit. So got to see a couple of friends after the meetings were over, and so it's been nice to connect again.
So it's like a homecoming for you in a way.
Yeah, a little, yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I noticed that St. George Greek Orthodox Church, where I actually got my start with my spiritual father, that led me eventually to the priesthood. I believe their Greek festival is also this weekend too, so that might be something later on I'd like to stop by and see.
It's Greek festival season. What can you say?
That's right. Ours is Rochester is coming up here pretty soon too.
Yeah, I think it's normally voted the best festival in Rochester. I'll definitely say it has the best food, but I might be biased.
Well, no, we're the best festival in New York, period.
Oh, there we go. I'm sure Astoria Queens will be very happy to hear that.
That's right. Let's see what kind of commentary we get with that. We'll have Buffalo calling us, Syracuse, the Archdiocese. Everybody will call, say, "What do you say in here?" But Rochester's the best.
Here's an idea for Tarn Priest. Next year, you and I will tour Greek festivals around the country.
There's that's. We'll both come back 400 pounds heavier.
What's the American way? What? All right. Well, we have a lot of questions in. I want to make sure we get to as many in this truncated 1 hour edition as possible. So let's kick it in with Cooking with B-Bug, who for the last few weeks has traditionally been our first questionnaire. Does the Eastern Orthodox Church believe in the apparitions of the Theotokos from Catholic accounts, such as the Lady of Fatima in Portugal or Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico, or are they deemed false and non-Orthodox?
No, I mean the Orthodox Church is aware of those apparitions or those appearances. But mainly, I think the Orthodox Church has been fairly silent and non-committal on that. Not to deny that, but then again, not to make too big a deal of that either. Certainly, the Orthodox Church in her in a Synaxarion and in the accounts of the Holy Fathers. Does support that many of the Holy Fathers and other saints of the Church have had accounts where the Theotokos has talked with them or communicated with them throughout our church history. But on those modern accounts, the Orthodox Church hasn't necessarily responded positive or negative.
And there have been a lot of them. I remember one famous one from when I was a kid in Florida, where the side, I think, was it a bank,
Yes.
where I guess the rubbing on the windows made it look like the outline of the Theotokos, and people were traveling from around the country to see it.
Oh, it was in Clearwater when Terry and I were living there, and so it was right off of Highway 19. And and both of us, both of us would drive that not every day, but almost every day. And so I did see that, and yes, it did have kind of the outline of the Theotokos as it's presented in like the Sweet Kiss or the famous icon, kind of like that. And one day we drove by, and there were just 100 chairs set up, and people just sitting and just observing it. And then I think finally the window was broken or something like that, and so it's now since gone.
So is that do we deem that a coincidence, or do we deem that as something holy?
Well, again, we're careful not to make too much of that, because what we want to be very careful of is, worship again is strictly limited to Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, obviously. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to create idols out of anything. So yes, it did have the appearance of the Theotokos, but for the Orthodox, it's to remind us that yes, she is present as Christ is present, but not to over embellish or to turn it into some type of idol.
So we don't want a Jesus in a potato chip situation.
Right. Let's just stay with Jay Leno in the potato chip, and let's.
All right, Marcello asks, who are all the prophets according to Orthodoxy, and is there a list of them? Are prophets only those whose names are also names of biblical books, or are there others who are mentioned elsewhere?
So the listing of the saints and the prophets is officially the synaxarion of the Orthodox Church. So it's the collection of all of the saints. So that's where you're going to find the listing of all the prophets. All right. The major prophets are also present typically in the iconography of an Orthodox church. So if you, in most churches, if the iconography is done according to custom, in the center of the church, there'll be a dome, and the Pantocrator, who is Jesus Christ, the creator, he will be there in the center, and the rim of the rim of the dome will have all of the major prophets, okay, who are honored by the church. So that's a place where you can find the prophets. Now, as far as are there prophets that are listed that are not biblically based, as far as I know, there are not any that we recognize in the church that have not been mentioned in the Bible.
And I can also say that they're not necessarily the names of the biblical books, because the very first name that comes to mind is Abraham, and he's in the book of Genesis, not the book of Abraham.
Yes, there we go. Right. The book of Abraham, right.
49K or 49,000 says, Father bless. I think these are my only questions tonight. Number one, why was God so violent in the Old Testament? Many would say that God of the Old Testament is very similar to the God in the Quran.
So, and again, I defer here to Stephen DeYoung and his book, and I'm just getting the title here really quick. It's an excellent treatise on just that question itself. And if you just give me one second here, so I can just get the title of it.
See, even when Father is on the road, he has access to his library.
Yes, I do. Yes, it's by Stephen DeYoung. It's God is a man of war, violence in the Old Testament. And what we have to understand is that this is not the violence of an angry God who is lashing out against those who are sinful, but what it is those who now have abandoned him Now, and I can't even say that, because certainly throughout the Bible we see this constant ebb and flow of the loyalty of the Jewish people to God. And so as we move through the Bible, we see that they are devoted to the single monotheistic God the Father. Okay, but then they fall away. Okay, and then God welcomes them back. So that's like the book of Hosea is a wonderful expression of that they have fallen away, and then God comes and he welcomes them back. So is there violence in the Bible? Certainly there is, but that violence is typically directed against those who attack his chosen people, or those people who have created situations that have led those who are righteous and those who worship God down a path that I'm trying to think how I express this, that these people have led them astray, and that they have acted against the will of God. And so what Stephen DeYoung says is there are times, just as there are times, in our human history, where we have had to fight against a particular evil. So Stalinism and communism was one example. Certainly Hitler was one example. Certainly the brutality of Mao Zedong, that's another example where we do have to fight so that we can protect those who are righteous and those who actually do and honor the will of God. So sometimes it just becomes necessary that evil does have to be eradicated, but it's not done out of a vengeance. It's not done out of an evilness, but it's done in the protection of those people who now have aligned themselves righteously with the will of God.
All right, we're going to jump back and forth a little bit to make sure that we get everyone. Some follow-ups. Truth Warrior says, Rochester Annunciation Greek Orthodox Church is the best Greek festival.
Oh, there we go. All right. There's a vote.
And TLM is here to dash your hopes. Sorry, Father. The St. George Festival is next weekend. You'll have to wait for the Annunciation Rock Festival.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's not this week. All right. I just I was passing by visiting a friend, and I saw the sign out, but I didn't see the date. So I was thinking that maybe it was this week, but unfortunately I'm not going to be able to see that. Oh well.
Joseph Fox asks in response to our short this week, if do priests go to confession? If a priest commits a sin, do they have to go to confession prior to serving the Eucharist?
So that's a great question. All right, and so the answer is that a priest, like any other person within the Orthodox Church, should regularly practice confession. All right. And so sometimes for the Orthodox priest, that can be difficult because he may be in a remote location where he doesn't necessarily have access to other Orthodox priests. But like a situation in Rochester where we do have a number of Orthodox priests available, then it is contingent upon the Orthodox priest to reach out to his brethren, and he can confess to them. And that's what I do, and that's what some of the other brother priests do with me. Right now, that answers the first question. The second question about do they have to do that before receiving communion? Sometimes, unfortunately, that's not possible. So the canons of the Church do provide an exception that the priest is required to serve the liturgy, even though he may not be worthy. Again, is not the right word, but that he may not be sacramentally prepared for that, meaning that he hasn't received confession yet. So the canons do have economia there, so that the priest, because of his obligation to serve the parish, is is allowed to receive communion, because the Orthodox Church right now does not allow the priest to not receive communion during a liturgy
Or serve communion.
or serve communion.
Okay. Mr. Dos Santos is in with greetings from Rio. I still think Tartan priest from Rio. Come on.
Yeah, I know that's coming up. That's going to be coming up.
Why in John 18:38 Jesus didn't reply to Pilate? Orthodox Study Bible doesn't have any comment on this. Would it be because he had already said that he is the truth? Thanks.
So, and I'm just calling that up just so that wait a minute. Give me 1 second here.
John,
and that is
John 18:38. And if you can read that for context, we'd appreciate it.
yes.
And as you're looking that up, Mr. Dos Santos says, and of course, Christ is risen. Alithos anesti.
That's how, and my shame on me, because the opening of the show should have been Christos anesti ek nekron thanatothanton katapatisas ketisentis nimazizo ikarisamnos. Christ is risen from the dead, trampling down death by death. To those in the tombs, he has granted life. That should have been the beginning.
You see, it's not too late, because even at the 11th hour of this live stream,
I can still. All right. So that is
1838.
1838. Okay. Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" And when he had said this, he went out again to the Jews and said, "I find no fault in him at all." But that wasn't it. He says he failed to answer, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, as he said, the Orthodox Study Bible doesn't have any comment on this, but would it be because he had already said that he is the truth? Is it that, God doesn't repeat himself?
But I'm trying to find where that I do remember that line, but it doesn't seem to be in 38. Because in 37, Pilate says to him, "Are you king?" And he says, "You rightly say that I am king. For this cause I was born, and for this cause I have come into the world, that I should bear witness to the truth." Okay. Then Pilate said to him about, what is truth? And then it says, and when he had said this, Pilate went out again to the Jews and said, "I find no fault in him." All right. Okay. So in 19:8, chapter 19, verse 8, therefore, when Pilate heard that saying, okay, the Jews said, "We have a law, and according to your law, he ought to die because he made himself the Son of God." When Pilate heard that saying this, he was more afraid, and he went to the praetorium and said, "Where are you from?" But Jesus gave him no answer. Okay. So in that, all right. So from St. John Chrysostom, what we have again, so Pilate has asked him before, questions about, "Are you king? Why don't you answer me? Don't you know that I have the power now to release you or to condemn you?" Okay. And he says, Jesus gave him no answer, for he who had heard this, "My kingdom is not here," and ought resist and rescued him, instead of which he had yielded to the fury of the Jews. Wherefore, seeing that he asked the question without object, he answers him no more indeed, or at other times was unwilling to give reasons, when his works testified so strongly for him, thus showing that he came voluntary to his work. And thus he remained silent. So that's the commentary from St. John Chrysostom that is very similar to what the answer was from from our not caller, but our chatter there. Okay, is that wherefore, seeing that Pilate asks questions without object, he does not answer him anymore, because he's already given him the reasons and he's already said all he has to say.
All right. Rebecca Shantz asks, do you know of anyone personally who went to church, kissed the blessed cloth, and experienced a healing of any kind, And if so, do you actively encourage the congregation to participate in that and offer opportunity?
So part A, no, I have never witnessed a miracle that has occurred by having contact with a holy or sacramental cloth. I have not personally witnessed that myself. And again, I want to be very cautious that we don't idolize things, because people can unfortunately mistake an action as an encouragement or a call to venerate something. All right, so if something like that happened and I were to witness the miracle, I would certainly say, once that was validated, that this is a grace that has been given to us to strengthen our faith. But it's not appropriate for us to make a big deal about it so that all of a sudden it goes from object of veneration to object of worship. So we don't want to create talismans. So we want to be very careful with that. So no, I wouldn't now say, oh, here is now the holy cloth. I witnessed a miracle. Please, everybody gather around. All right. So yes, I would make mention of it, but those things are meant to increase our grace. But if we do anything more, then we run the risk of creating a talisman.
All right. Steve Lenoris asks, does the Orthodox Church teach that prophecy can happen today? If so, are there any fulfilled prophecies of quote-unquote modern saints?
So yes, part one, yes, the Orthodox Church does believe that there can be prophetical statements that are made, and we have several of the modern day saints, like Elder Paisios, I'm trying to think of some others who have also made prophecies, and those who have experienced the uncreated light. Okay, and they've given us prophecies. Now, do those prophecies hold the same the same weight, let's say, that the prophecies of the Old Testament prophets? So maybe or maybe not. So the Orthodox Church, doesn't discredit that we still have people today who can prophesize. And the second part of that was,
if so, are there any fulfilled prophecies of modern saints?
To my knowledge right now, I can't recall of any. I mean, we've had several people who have predicted that we live in the end times. Okay, and can we say for certain that Jesus will return? Of course we can say that. That we know. Okay, so we do know that the end times are coming. All right, but do we know exactly when those end times are coming? No. So those prophecies we have to just be very cautious with. And as we learned in Holy Week from Monday and Tuesday, the key word is for us to always be vigilant and watchful. And that's why I love the parable of the 10 maidens who were watchful for the bridegroom to come, and not to be those who were not watchful and went into town to go buy oil and then missed the bridegroom when he came.
Mig says, hi, good evening, and happy Easter. Can you explain one of the prizes you sent me for winning our trivia question? I think it was from our 15,000 K subscriber show.
Oh, yes. Okay.
It was a box with rose pebbles along with an icon.
Oh, so what I wanted to send is just a few extra things. So if what you're talking about is, I sent you, I think, a little baggie that has some of the rose incense. So I know that some of our listeners like to create a little iconostasi area or corner in their house. And so I like to provide them with at least a little what we call the starter kit. So, so I think probably what I put in there was maybe a little bit of charcoal and also the incense, so that when you put your icon up in the icon corner, then you can also burn the incense too when you say your prayers by that icon, by the iconostasi.
Absolutely wonderful. Aaron F. Christ is risen. Alithos anesti, Aaron.
SD.
How do we put it into context for non-Orthodox phrases such as, quote, we worship thy passion, end quote, or, quote, we worship his third-day resurrection, end quote. To non-Orthodox ears, these might seem confusing, hearing us say we worship an event.
Oh, good.
Well, it's not specifically the event itself.
No,
yeah.
It's always, worship is always directed, at the at the individual. So what we worship is what it is that he has, that he only as God can do. All right. So only God can resurrect. That's why he says, I am the resurrection. So when we say that we worship your third day resurrection, he is the resurrection. So we actually are directing our worship at Jesus Christ.
Santa Man 1 has a comment. When you find the Greek festival that serves Southern fried chicken, you know you've found it. I would agree.
That's hilarious. Southern fried chicken at the Greek festival. It's got to be one of our southern parishes. That's awesome.
Hassan El Daily has a very quick question about how do we submit our questions. Well, you submit your questions right here, just as you did this one, right here in the chat, and we will answer as best as we can. Welcome to our channel, Hassan. PF Stats, can you explain how new article states Archbishop Elpiphodoros compares Greek bishops against gay marriage law to anti-Semites and Nazis? And Metropolitus Amvrosios asks Elpiphodoros to resign.
Again, I just really don't want to make commentary on what other bishops are saying. It's inappropriate for a priest to make commentary on bishops. I just think that's not something that priests should comment on.
Santaman 1 goes on to ask, so Balaam wasn't a prophet? The talking donkey?
Oh, the talking donkey.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Well, I don't think did he prophesize, or did he just say, why are you treating me thusly?
Yes. Would that make the donkey the prophet?
But he didn't prophesize anything. He just said, hey, leave me alone. Why are you treating me like this?
Yeah, the Book of Donkey, nobody would ever take us seriously. So.
The Book of Donkey, that's true.
Jumping back up, 49K, second question. I found out that a girl I used to like in my Protestant church is very, how would I say, maybe a little bit of revealing clothing-wise, and she also lives a life completely different from the church. What should I do? That's also called a bear trap where I come from.
That is exactly what it is. Really, and I've mentioned this to many of my parishioners. We have to, sometimes the best that we can do is to be, a silent witness with our own actions and behaviors. I can't tell you, in all of my parishes, I have had parishioners that have come to me and said, Father, you have to institute a dress code policy for the young men and the young women, and you have to tell them how they're supposed to dress. And, and I did that one time, and it was horrible. Okay, and so what the best that I can do is I can make commentary on what is appropriate dress, but beyond that, I think that there's really not much that I can do. Each person is accountable for their own actions. So I think that maybe what you can do is that maybe you can make, if the opportunity presents itself, and many times God will offer us that opportunity, that we get into a discussion and that person happens to be there, and that discussion can focus around what are the things that are appropriate in the church. And then maybe that person can then realize and that these are things that these are things that they should look out for. But a direct confrontation with the person, I don't think, is the proper thing for us to do.
Well, now as a priest, I know you just mentioned that you tried to do a dress code once and it failed. But let's be straightforward. If somebody were to come into the divine liturgy wearing nothing but a Speedo, you'd probably act on that.
Yes, I would absolutely act on that. But if a woman, let's say, is wearing a low cut blouse, how low is low? I mean, when does that
You don't want to pull out a tape measure.
Breach? Right. So but you're right. I mean, there are certain things. I mean, I would even make commentary on somebody coming in wearing shorts. Okay. So there's nothing offensive about shorts, but it's not appropriate for it's not appropriate for liturgy, or any type of worship service within the Orthodox Church. And I have done that. I mean, there are people that have come to me and said, Father, can I come to church with a T-shirt, or can I come to church with shorts on? And I tell them, no, you cannot. All right. So in those cases, yes, I have said something, but to call somebody out, that's a little bit tougher.
All right. Miggs has a second question. If an infallible teaching can only be made when the 5 patriarchs are in agreement, how is anything the church said after the Oriental Orthodox Church separated teachings we should believe in, even when the East and West stayed together after the Third Ecumenical Council? Aren't they still separated from Oriental Orthodox, and therefore the 5 patriarchs aren't in agreement?
Well, all 5 of the all the way up to the 7 ecumenical councils, all 5 of the patriarchs were represented. So now, when you say Oriental, okay, so that those churches come out of the Antiochian out of Antioch and out of Alexandria. Okay, so just because you are a church that is not, at the time, let's say, is not necessarily in communion with the 5 patriarchs, that doesn't make you a patriarchate. So the Oriental Orthodox were not solely represented by only did not solely represent Antioch nor Alexandria. They were a part of that, but they did not represent the entirety of Antioch and Alexandria.
So what does that tell us about the infallible teachings?
That the teachings the teachings that were done under the 5 patriarchates that were stated in the ecumenical councils before the schism when Rome left, that those are considered to be infallible because they were done with all 5 patriarchs, and where and as Jesus said, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there among you. And so we feel that we know that is where the Holy Spirit is also present.
Santa Man 1 asks, does the Greek Orthodox Church of America have anything similar to the Antiochian Church's Western Rite?
Does the Greek Orthodox Church?
of America, the GOA,
Right.
have anything similar to the Antiochian Church's Western Rite?
So so now that's interesting because I am not aware of an Antiochian Western Rite. I've heard of Western Rite, okay, but I'm not aware of it under the Antiochian. The Greek Orthodox Church does not have a Western rite. The only rite that they have is the Saint John Chrysostom liturgy, together with the Saint Basil liturgy. But I was not aware that there was a Western rite that was in the Antiochian Church. If somebody has some information to that, I'd be very curious to hear that. Oh, and also that does remind me of a clarification. There was a question that was asked last week, about the different churches that the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese is in communion with. And one of the questions came up was about the ROCOR, the Russian Orthodox Church of America, and then also in Antioch, all right, the Antiochian Church. And what I had said was that as far as I know that we are currently, as we have been, in communion with the Antiochian Church, but due to recent events, we are not necessarily in communion with now the Russian or the Patriarchate of Moscow due to events. But I've had received some some people that had asked me, did I hear correctly that that the Greek Archdiocese is not in communion with the Antiochian Church? And the answer to that is no. We are in communion with the Antiochian Church. In fact, when I was in Flint, we had an excellent relationship for all 10 years that I was there with my Antiochian brethren there. So I just want to make sure I make that clarification.
And we did have a number of questions from last week, which I said we would reference in our next episode. We traditionally don't do that with the On the Road edition, so we'll be kicking off next week with a question about the Illuminati. So I'm actually kind of looking forward to your answer on that one. Santa Man 1 does have a further clarification. The Antiochian Church in America has a handful of Western title parishes. I've already added that to our research question list, so we will touch upon that again next week. Aaron William H. doesn't have a question. He just has a very, very nice statement saying our channel is a gem. Thanks be to God.
Thank you.
Your sense of humor makes it more relatable too. We really, really appreciate that.
Thank you.
I think the sense of humor is actually probably one of the things that does mark us apart. But I don't know. I've always said that laughter is one of the proofs of the divine. But that's just me.
There you go. That's why my favorite icon that is not an official icon is the laughing Jesus. I'm sure most of you have seen that, and I've got to say that's it's not an icon, but it is one of my favorite pictures.
And laughing Jesus is different from Buddy Christ, of course.
Yeah, yes. It's not Buddy Christ, right? Facebook friend Christ.
WS asks, do you agree with what this Orthodox priest says? The name of God was revealed to men through Jesus Christ. The name Yahweh, found in the Old Testament, is not attributed to God, which Christ objected to.
So if he's saying that Christ objected to that name, I guess I'm looking for the particular biblical reference because Christ said. So then the words of Christ are given to us, in the obviously in the Gospels, but I'm trying to recall where Jesus said that, that he negates the title of Yahweh. And now, maybe he didn't use that particular term, but I can't recall any instance where he negated or declined the use of that term.
WS, if you have a verse attached to this, that'd be great. Now I understand you're quoting another priest, but what we're curious about is the source that that priest is using for this statement. Um, Nicholas asks, "Can confession be done over Zoom?"
So that's a great question too. What can be done over Zoom or over a phone call is the act of confession. Okay. The absolution, though, must take place in person. So I've been myself involved in a number of situations where a particular parishioner has a spiritual father. Okay. And so they wish to retain that relationship. So they will confess to that spiritual father through, now they can do it through Zoom, but most of them do it through a telephone conversation. And then through agreement between that priest and myself, I will then perform the absolution part based on what is the recommendation of the spiritual father of that person.
Now, what happens if you happen to be very, very far away from Greek Orthodox Church? You have mentioned before that sometimes there's some economia, and priest allows a person to go to a different church for the time being. Can they still receive absolution there, or can they only receive it in the Greek Orthodox Church or an Orthodox Church?
Yeah, I mean, again, that's all done. I don't want to say it can't be done, but that the priest then would contact his bishop, and then the bishop would find a solution to that particular situation. So that would not fall within the hands of the priest. That would fall within the hands of the bishop.
Thelonious has a very interesting question. Father, have you ever been asked to bless Greek statues of the gods? I assume he means the ancient Greek gods?
Yeah, I'm sure that's what he means. The answer to that is I have never been asked to bless Greek god statues, nor would I bless Greek god statues.
So you can't bless the statue of Zeus.
No. So Demos, please do not bring me your statue of Zeus.
Oh, darn. Okay. How about Hercules? No, never mind. John Deere asks, do we know if we will have some connection to children in afterlife? Thank you.
Now, when say have connection to children,
I assume to our children in the afterlife, our progeny and so forth.
I mean, look, nobody has returned so far from the dead to tell us what it is that we're going to experience. Okay, but what we do know from the story of Lazarus and the rich man is we know that we retain the consciousness of who we were because the rich man remembers his brothers and his family. So because of that, we do believe that we will retain the recognition of those who are part of our family. So from that standpoint, I wouldn't see why we could not recognize our own children, our own spouse, our parents, so on and so forth.
I mean, isn't that the one thing that if you believe in the near-death experiences, most of them have some familial connection. I saw my mother, I saw my father, I saw my grandmother, I saw my grandfather. That's always connected to these stories.
Well, and to take that point even further, the vast majority, I mean, over 90% of the situations where I have been, and to include my own father, that I have experienced with them ready for death. I mean, near that death, there is vast majority of them all call out to people who have long since passed away, and the manner in which they do it is is peaceful. So it's almost as if they are being welcomed by family. And I see that constantly. So it's so if it was just an aberration in their mind, I just don't believe that it would be as prolific as it is, because I just see it, so many times with so many people, that they are calling out and in fact lifting up their hands and reaching out as if, the other person is reaching out their hands and they're reaching out their hands to grasp them. So I absolutely do believe that we do retain that memory and that we are being greeted by our loved ones, welcomed.
Jackhammer asks, I love that name.
Yeah, right.
Wife of my brother died recently. We're sorry for the loss. That makes me wonder, do people who died go to heaven, or their souls sleep and wait until the second coming of Jesus?
Okay, part B is correct. So what Orthodox belief is that they receive upon death a foretaste of both heaven and of hell, But as you said, they are in a state of sleep until the second coming.
But doesn't that contradict with what you just said, about seeing, the familial ties when you die if they're asleep? Now, I think you're going to go towards something we've talked about, regarding time. That
Correct.
heaven
That's
is
exactly where I was going to go.
okay. Heaven is outside of time, and therefore it's already happened when you die and you reach that state. But I just want to be clear.
Right. Or, there can be a duality of states, right?
Yes. I was gonna make an American joke here, but never mind. Diane asks, do you think the Orthodox Church needs, quote unquote, modernization, as Archbishop Elpidophoros has recently said? And mind you, I'm just going to jump ahead and set this up for you, Father. What does modernization mean? Because nowadays, I tend to think when I hear the word modernization, and I hear that a movie or a book or a video game has been made for modern audiences, a lot of that content tends to be in disagreement with the church. So what exactly do we mean here by modernization?
So again, I want to be careful here. So I don't have access to exactly what Bishop Elpidophoros said, but what the commentary that I'll make is just on the term modernization, independent of what he said or did not say. All right, and so the Orthodox Church in no way is called to meet and to keep up with modern times. What the Orthodox Church is called to, though, is to be able to adjust our language so that we can speak to those in modern time. And there's a huge difference between those two. And unfortunately, in some churches, in some Christian churches today, what we see is their idea of speaking to a modern audience is to accept what that modern audience feels is the current truth. And the Orthodox Church strongly rejects that. The Orthodox Church maintains a singular truth that was established by God, Jesus Christ, as man. That truth has to remain unchanged. However, each generation of priests and Christians is called to be able to spread the truth of the gospel in a language that can be best understood by those in a modern age.
How does the church deal with, since you're talking about using language to spread the word and so forth, and one of the aspects of modernization seems to be even with the use of this word, it seems that definitions keep changing to meet certain ideologies. How do you deal with that?
So, I mean, So I want to use examples. I don't want to jump right away to the example of homosexuality because that's just
Well,
that.
it's a not
But
yeah.
what I want to say is, let's take divorce. Okay, so so uh, in in modern times, okay, divorce now is considered not an issue. You want to be married, you want to be divorced, it really doesn't matter. There's no stigma that is attached to divorce. Okay? So the Orthodox Church rejects that. All right. So the Orthodox Church is not going to agree with the modern idea that it's okay to get divorced. What the Orthodox Church is going to continue to say is that divorce is that marriage is the way that a man and woman should enter into a relationship, and that is what was established by God, and that Jesus Christ blessed at the wedding of Cana, and that divorce is always a sad event and should be avoided at all costs. And there should be every effort to maintain that marriage and to not give up on it. So in that sense, the Orthodox Church rejects the modern idea that divorce or marriage, it doesn't really matter. So the church has to reject that. But they have to speak to that new age idea of divorce in a manner that is acceptable, I'm sorry, in a
Understood.
manner that can be understood by a modern divorced couple.
Santa Man 1 says, we have parishioners who are perplexed that anyone enters the church barefoot, and others who are perplexed people wear shoes on holy ground. And how do you deal with that? That is, I mean, in some faiths, you have to take your shoes off. How dare you come into our place of worship with shoes on? And yet, from our end, I don't think you would have enough incense to cover that smell. So, how do you what is the church's stance on that? No pun intended.
All right, and that's not to deny. I understand. I mean, when Moses went up to where God was present on Mount Sinai, he was told, "Take your sandals off, for this is holy ground." So I can understand the origin of that idea. Okay, but we don't have any indications, or we don't have any commandments in the New Testament that speak about the requirement to remove any garment of our clothing when we come in. The canons of the church don't address that. All right. Now, there are individual cultures that do retain that. For example, the Ethiopian Orthodox, the priests have a pair of slippers that they will use when they are standing in front of the altar. But that's not because they don't want to wear shoes. It's because they believe that any animal product is inappropriate in the Holy of Holies. All right. So there's not been any type of commandment or regulation that from the New Testament that has told us that we must remove certain clothing or garment or shoes before we enter into church.
All right. 49K asks, what do you all mean when the church say, Holy Theotokos, save us?
So the one book I didn't bring with me is my Orthodox Handbook of Catechism.
Your own book. You didn't bring your own book?
I didn't bring my own book. All right.
Which is, for those who might ask, is out on Amazon now, and the link should be in this description.
All right. So a couple of things there. All right. The first one is historically based, as you've probably heard me say on this program before. When that Paraklesis was written, there was a literal call from the people to save the city of Constantinople from the attack by the Ottoman Empire. So this was a literal call for salvation. So they called upon the protectress of the city, who is the Theotokos, okay, and asked her if she would save us, but that she would intercede and ask Jesus to say, and ask Christ to intervene or to save now the city. So it was a literal call for save us now, not a call for salvation into the heavenly kingdom. So we have to understand the context of how that was written first off. All right. And the second part of this is that the Orthodox Church clearly recognizes that worship and granting of salvation is reserved only to the Holy Trinity. All right. But the Orthodox Church also recognizes the unique place that the Virgin Mary has as the ever-present Theotokos, who is the Mother of God, and does have the ability to intercede for us to her Son, just as Abraham looked to intercede on behalf of Sodom and Gomorrah to God the Father. So she does act in that unique role because of her closeness to her Son. Okay, so there is an intercession there that we believe can happen. Now, I know that some priests have changed that Holy Theotokos, save us, and they've changed that to Holy Theotokos, intercede for us, or I think they've used another phrase. I'm trying to remember what that is. Okay, but what it takes away is what the historical context of that was. And we as Orthodox have the obligation, the responsibility to explain to others what that term save us means, both from a historical context and from an intercessory context.
All right. Just a couple more because as if you're tuning in late, this is an on-the-road edition. Father is in Detroit, and we tend to only go for an hour for these on-the-road editions to give Father a chance to catch up on some travel sleep. So real quick, Mahmoud asks, I hope I pronounced that correctly, what exactly does love your enemies mean? Does it also include enemies of God?
So that's an interesting term, enemies of God. All right. So starting off, I guess, this conversation, there are people at times that we have a dislike for because of something they've done to us, to our family, or to our friends. Okay. And unfortunately, sometimes that vice can take over and manifest itself into hatred. And what Jesus is saying is that what the most important thing for us to do is to be able to always see the image and likeness of God in the other person, and to recognize that the passions that we have in a negative fashion should be overcome by the recognition that God is present in each and every individual. So this is why we should love those who love us, but equally so, we should love those then that unfortunately get under our skin, and I don't want to say hate, but that we strongly dislike, but also those who do hate us, okay? Because what we are praying for is that the Holy Spirit has the grace that they can open up their hearts to recognize what they're doing wrong, which is denying the image and likeness of God in the person that they are seeing. So that call to love love those who hate us is more about allowing and asking and praying that the Holy Spirit enlighten and illumine their heart and soften their heart so that they can recognize then the image and likeness of God in other people. Having said that, I'll now take you back to the first question, which is God a violent God? Okay. And there are situations where violence directed against those who are either righteous or those who are unable to defend themselves, or the poor, the neglected, okay, and those people that are taking advantage of that, then we do need to fight against that. And it's not that we hate those people, but we do have to stem the tide of that collective evil, and we are called as Christians to do that. So I wanted to kind of offer, both sides of this. All right. One is just the general everyday person that unfortunately has hatred in their heart. We want the Holy Spirit to come and to illumine them. But then we also recognize situations through the course of human history where we must stem the tide of those barbaric and evil actions.
Costa V has kind of a follow-up to this question, and I think you kind of answered it, but I'm going to give you a chance to sum it up. It's not always easy to see the likeness of God in those that get under our skin. Anything we can do to make it easier? Prayer, perhaps?
Okay, right. I'm never going to say no to prayer, allowing the Holy Spirit to also illumine us and to give us the opportunity to soften our hearts. But if there's somebody that we dislike, then maybe what we need to do is we need to take more time out to find out what is it about that person that causes us to dislike them. Okay. Now, sometimes it can be not everybody gets along with everybody else. I mean, you're not going to like everybody that you meet. And Jesus has not called us to like everybody that we meet. Okay. He's called us to recognize the image and likeness of God and to show love to that person. All right. So there's nothing necessarily wrong with a person that you just don't get along with, so you avoid contact with that person. So sometimes there's nothing to do, okay? But sometimes we have a person that all of a sudden has changed, and now they've done actions that we do dislike. And so this is when we need to go back and understand what has made that change in them, and is that something that we can help them overcome?
Santa Man 1 has an amusing point. There's a saying in the South, God loves you, and I'm trying.
There we go. Okay. Yeah. Only God has perfect love. And yes, and all we can do is continue to try to love.
Joe Jones, Father, I'm wondering if you have ever seen, and this kind of connects to an earlier question we got. I'm wondering if you have ever seen or known of a miraculous healing from holy unction, especially during Holy Week.
I have not personally witnessed it myself, but yes, I have heard many times about the use of unction that has resulted in either a spiritual or a physical healing. Yes.
And WS asks, why doesn't the church own rental property to generate money, then ask for money? And would that be not taxable?
So here's the perfect example of where the church is not a business, okay? Because again, anytime that you get involved in business, then it can lead you down a very destructive path, and the church wants to avoid that at all costs. Now, when he makes the mention, and I'm not picking on our chatter here, but when saying that the church asks for money is like using the term "I'm taking communion." All right. No, you're not taking anything. What you're doing is you're receiving something that you know that you need. It's the same way with church. So there should be a free offering, a stewardship. This is why we call it stewardship. You're not paying dues, you're not paying rent, you're not buying your way into heaven. What you're doing is, out of the goodness of your heart, you recognize that the church needs to operate on funds, as it did in the New Testament, as we see St. Paul and St. Peter and all of them. Okay, so we do recognize that the church needs funds so that they can support the ministries that they do, the ministries of the Philoptikos that help those in need, the ministries of the church that help educate our children, the ministries of the choir that help sing to the glory of God. So it's not the church asking for money. It is you saying, I recognize and support what the church is doing, and I am freely giving of those funds that the church has given me. So we've got to understand it in the proper context. If you say that the church is asking for money, you're turning them into a golf course. So I want something, so I'm asking you for money so that you have the permission to be here on my golf course. That is not what the church is in any way. So those who do not wish to freely give do not understand what the purpose of the church is.
On top of that, as far as rental property is concerned, I just love to see the headline: "Church evicts poor people." Just
right. Oh, yeah. There we go. Right. Mm-hmm.
Santa Man 1, you might as well write a book, my friend. He says, my first Orthodox priest, after I converted, said if the church has money left over at the end of the year, they're not doing it right.
I can't argue with that. There you go. That the church is not meant to be a bank, and unfortunately, I have experienced parishes that love to look at their bank account, and that's 180 degrees from where the church should be. He is absolutely right. That's a great statement. If commend that priest for what he said, that the church should always have a zero balance, theoretically.
And we will finish with one of 49K's questions. They ask, my mom told me all Jewish people are saved no matter what. Is that true?
Again, the Orthodox Church could not make a comment like that, because the Orthodox Church does not know the mind of God, and judgment is reserved to God alone. So to say, now we can say that the Jewish nation remains the favored nation of God. We can say that, but to guarantee that being Jewish automatically saves you, the Orthodox Church could not make a statement like that.
All right, fantastic. And with that, we end tonight's On the Road edition of Orthodoxy Questions Answered. I've been asked to say this more often, so please support our channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing as much as you can. We really appreciate that. We have some awesome videos coming up. This week, we have a Tartan priest about gyros coming out.
Awesome.
We have a virtual Sunday school. We're going back to the New Testament. We're going to be looking at the parable of the prodigal son. And we also have a Greek Orthodox 101 asking the question, can bad people go to heaven? Also, Father, I'm going to sit him down, and he's been promising this for a while, and I want to make sure we get this video out in June about his grievances before I release my own video about my grievances about filming videos. So Father, we have to do that.
We have to sit down. So, well, you got to get on my schedule and just strap me down to the seat.
Okay, we'll do that. And we also have some more Tartan priests to look forward to. I think we'll be filming at least one or two in Greece later this year. So we're
great.
Get some more
looking forward
ones.
to that.
All right. Well, with that said, we will be back for a regular full show next week. And we look forward to seeing you all this Sunday for our Divine Liturgy. Sunday the Ortho starts at 9 a.m. Father, have a very safe trip back to Rochester.
And thank you again, Demos, for taking the time to do this. And I think it's only appropriate again that we close with Christ is risen from the dead, trampling down death by death, and to those in the tombs he has granted life. Thank you for all your wonderful and great questions, and we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week. Have a good night, everyone.
Night.